Good afternoon, everyone. We're just letting a few more people come in. We'll start our presentation here shortly. Just want to say welcome again. Thank you for joining us this Tuesday. And we'll just wait a few more minutes and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Abby Whittington. I'm the annual events coordinator here for the North Country Trail Association, and I want to say welcome to our next event with the 2021 virtual celebration. To go over a few things again, all of you have come in muted. So if you look at your toolbar at the very bottom of Zoom, you'll see your microphone with a red line slashed through that. We do ask that you stay muted unless otherwise directed. Right next to that, you have your video camera. If you don't want to be on a video, click that and a red line will go through it and your camera will turn off. And then you can jump all the way to the middle. You'll see that little chat bubble. If you would like to send any comments throughout this presentation, please feel free to use that. Or if there's any questions that come up, use that as well. And again, we say welcome. And with that, I will leave this for Val then.
All right, hello everyone. I'm going to attempt to share my screen here. And can you all see, Abby, can you see the right screen? No. Okay. Let's try this again. Now?
It has the next slide next to it.
It's the presenter view.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry about that. This worked. It's worked 5 minutes ago.
The way it always goes.
How about hide presenter view? Share screen. Let's try one more time. Still no?
Yeah, it hasn't pulled up to the full screen yet.
Try hitting just F5 and see if that pushes it into presenter mode.
Sorry about this, guys. Not sure where to go from here.
Val, I think you just need to start your slideshow.
Try F5, Val.
Yeah, we're doing that, and then we're getting showing on the.
Well,
sorry about that.
A lot of people are saying it looks good to them too. So, I mean, if you want to, you can do the presenter mode too. It just shows some of the notes and the next slide as well.
That's okay. You can see it now where it is.
Yep. And then we can see the stuff on the left. So, but yep.
Okay. Well, we're going to go with that. We're going to be
Sounds
adaptable here. So I only have a few slides, and thankfully we'll get into some really engaging conversation with our regional trail coordinators. So I will share my few slides, and I'll be happy to share with anybody afterwards if you are unable to kind of see them the right way here. So today we're going to talk a little bit about trail use ethics, pretty much human behavior and how it affects us and impacts the North Country Trail. So when we talk about trail use ethics, just to kind of take it back big picture, when we're talking about ethics, we're talking about, the definition is moral principles that govern a person's behavior or the conducting of an activity. So to kind of narrow that in a little bit, when we're talking about trail use ethics, we're talking about guidelines and philosophies, related to the outdoors that seek to find a way for visitors to lessen their impact on nature and on other visitors to nature. It's important to remember that what we're talking about here is really, guidelines, it's attitudes, behaviors, etiquette, not necessarily rules and regulations. So you may have seen, you may be familiar with kind of either of those signs on the right-hand side there or something, similar. I'm sure most folks have seen that sort of tri-yield, sign on the bottom that is, an expected behavior of how mountain bikers and hikers and equestrians are supposed to yield to one another. It's not a rule, it's not a regulation. It's not something that you're going to get a ticket for from a park ranger. It's just sort of an agreed upon, guideline for using the trail. So there are many, many different, kinds of ethics of use, in sort of looking up this presentation or preparing for this presentation, I found that the Boy Scouts, kind of have an ethic of use. I've had kind of a lot of community agreements in the past couple months, in the past year, with groups that I've worked with. I've had sort of agreements with roommates in the workplace, families, things along those lines. I'm going to address two that you might be familiar with in the outdoor world, but feel free to kind of enter in the chat, other sort of use ethics or, belief systems like this that you're familiar with. So the first one we're going to talk about is leave no trace, which is probably the most well-known philosophy of outdoor wilderness ethics. I think one thing to take away here is that Leave No Trace is an actual organization. There's the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics, and they are an organization that provides, research, education, and initiatives for people to get outside responsibly. So they're kind of focused around these 7 principles that you see. Plan ahead and prepare, travel and camp on durable surfaces, dispose of waste properly, leave what you find, minimize campfire impact, respect wildlife, and be considerate of other visitors. Tons of information, really interesting information on their website. So if you go to that lnt.org, you can kind of, get a lot of information there, including some trainings that you can take, which I would highly recommend. And then I put a link on this slide, put a link to a resource that I thought was great for trail maintainers. It's Leave No Trace for the Outdoor Workplace. So that might be of interest to you. Another one that we have, interacted with a lot in the past year or so is this new campaign that launched in 2020 called Recreate Responsibly. Very similar to Leave No Trace. It also addresses some issues of inclusivity in the outdoors. You'll see that number 3 on there, build an inclusive outdoors, be an active part of making the outdoors safe and welcoming for all identities and abilities. So again, very similar to Leave No Trace in sort of what the guidelines are for folks in the outdoors, but something a little bit different. And their website is right at the top there. So why are we talking about this right now? It's definitely important all of the time, but this slide I thought gave us a good snapshot into what public land use is. This was from 2020, I believe. It may have been from 2019, so I'm not positive, don't quote me on that, but gives you a good snapshot in, this is visits per year in hundreds of millions. So this is how many people are using these different, Forest Service lands, National Park Service lands, state park systems, and so on. So, they're estimating here that there are 792 million, hundreds of millions of visits per year to state park systems. So that's a lot of people, using our state parks. And I think the big takeaway from all of this is, understanding what our actions are and making decisions based on this idea of, if I make a decision as an individual, there's an impact there. But if 792 million people or visitors to our parks make that decision, what is the impact then? So if you take away one thing from this, that's the thought I want you to think about. So to kind of introduce a few of these topics, we are going to have a fun debate style presentation with our regional trail coordinators, Tom and Stephanie and Kenny. We're going to take two different topics and we're going to present, different perspectives on those two topics. I want you to keep in mind that the RTCs who are presenting these topics may not necessarily agree with these, ethics of use. So don't, attack Kenny for saying that he thinks that you should do one thing. He's definitely playing a role here and may or may not believe exactly what he's saying. So before each presentation, we're going to put out a little poll, one question poll on the topic to see how folks kind of feel about it. And then we will pull you again after the presenters. The presenters are each going to present 5 minutes on each topic. And then we're going to ask one more question that we pull from the chat. So if you have questions for them, I definitely encourage you to throw them in the chat. We'll ask an additional question of each presenter, and then we'll pull you again at the end to see if, kind of the results change or if they were able to influence how you feel about these topics. So today's topics, we're going to talk about two things that we've kind of encountered across the trail. The first one is the leave no trace principle number 4, and you can read it there, but it's to allow others a sense of discovery by leaving rocks, plants, archaeological artifacts, and other objects of interest as you find them. So that's going to be debate or discussion number 1. And during that, Tom is going to support that statement and Kenny will oppose that statement. And then we're going to talk about our second topic will be geotagging, which I don't know how familiar folks are with, but essentially it's adding location information to your photos and videos that you post online. Very popular on social media, especially on Instagram. Folks will share, here's a beautiful picture of a bridge and tag that photo and say, I was at, this spot right along the North Country Trail. So we're going to have a discussion about that. And Stephanie is going to talk about maybe some reasons why the benefits of geotagging outweigh the costs. And Tom is going to, oppose that idea. So I am going to stop sharing whatever part of my screen that I'm sharing here and go back to Brady Bunch here. And I am going to open it up for the RTCs. We're going to start our first discussion on the leave what you find. Matt Robotham, if you could put the poll up for folks to take.
All right, should be up.
Is everybody able to see that? It says the leave no trace principle of leave what you find should be followed by all users without exception. All right, I am going to flip a coin and I'm gonna go with seniority and let Kenny call heads or tails here.
Tails.
Heads it is.
All right, what does that mean?
That means Tom gets to decide. Tom, would you like to go first or would you like for Kenny to go first?
Oh, I'll go first.
All right. All right, so Tom is going to go first and share with us why the leave no trace principle of leave what you find should be followed by all users without exception. And before Tom gets into it, I don't know if you can see on your screen, but I am seeing that the poll here says that 42% of people agree with this statement and 37% of people disagree and 21% of people are not sure. So let's check back in after these two present and see where we're at. Go ahead, Tom.
All right, here we go. Thanks to Val and my esteemed colleague, Kenny. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades, brothers and sisters, I'm here to argue in favor of the proposition that leave no trace principle of leave what you find should be followed by all users without exception. To set the stage, I'm discussing areas where no regulation exists. No regulation exists about taking things. Clearly taking things from national parks or other sensitive areas that already have laws against taking are clear. So we're not going to include those areas in the discussion. To begin, I'd like to do a short activity, and it might help if you close your eyes here and get into your imagination. I'd like you to imagine a beautiful day, a day so nice that you decide to go hiking on your favorite part of the trail. It's wildflower season, and along this section of trail, you know of a beautiful meadow that bursts with color and life, and you're just sure that the time is right to view this wonder of nature. You've got your camera ready, and as you hike the mile or so to the meadow, your anticipation builds. In past years, as you approach the meadow, you remember seeing glimpses here and there of some of those wildflowers. But today is different. The plants are there, but there are no flowers. No bother, you think. I'm sure there will be plenty of flowers in the meadow. As you round the last turn and are preparing for nature's radiance, you are shocked to see that all of the flowers have been picked by other users. There's no more flowers to enjoy. They're all gone. Now, this is clearly an overtop example of why the leave no trace principle of leave what you find is important. Leave no trace is about making good decisions to protect the world around you, the world we all enjoy. Leave what you find is a practice that both protects our natural areas and respects other users by not damaging or removing those things that we enjoy. Sure, Tom, you might be saying, but do all of us have to follow this rule all of the time? Leave no trace principles are just that, principles. They're not rules. Well, even before the pandemic, our parks and forests were seeing a surge in use, as we saw in one of Val's slides. Millions upon millions of users are heading to the outdoors to recreate. The pandemic supersized this trend, as I'm sure most of you noticed on the sections of the trail that you maintain. Imagine if all those millions of people decided to pick just one flower, remove just one rock, collect one seashell, and so on, every single time they go outside. The effect could be potentially disastrous for the environment and almost certainly cause a negative effect on our enjoyment of those natural areas. If there were only a few hundred or thousand or even 100,000 people out there enjoying the outdoors, it wouldn't be such a problem. Now that there are hundreds of millions of people out there, this principle has become critical to the health of our natural areas and to the enjoyment of others. Okay, Tom, you might be thinking, if we aren't going to collect wildflowers or rocks or seashells while out and about, what other things can we do to help us remember these places and create affinity for the areas that we have visited? One good option is to keep a field journal and write a description of what you did that day and what you saw. Those with some artistic ability, and even those without, can draw pictures of the lovely flowers or that old animal skull or that cool rock that you saw. When I was a kid, I would collect things in the woods that I thought were cool, but I found that just a few years later, I couldn't even remember where I had found them, and I ended up with a shelf of some random rocks and pieces of wood in my bedroom. A journal is a great way to keep these memories alive. If you are like me and find that even drawing a circle is difficult, take pictures. If you have a smartphone, most likely it has a super fancy camera on it that can take wonderful pictures. Since it's digital, take as many as you want. You're never going to run out of film. If you don't have a smartphone, you can invest in a lightweight camera and toss it in your pack. You can combine the two, take some pictures, print them out, and tape them in your journal. If you like to visit a place again and again, this can have the cool result of seeing how that area changes over time. To conclude, because of the massive amount of people, hundreds of millions heading outside to enjoy our country's many natural wonders, including the North Country Trail, let's protect our environments and respect others by strictly following the leave no trace principle of leave what you find. Thank you.
All right. Well, I tried to draw Tom a flower while he was talking. I didn't want you to be so heartbroken.
Oh, it was better than anything I could ever do.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Tom. I am going to kick it over to Kenny, but I would like to remind everyone, please feel free to enter a question, for either Tom or Kenny in the chat, and we will go back to them with questions at the end. All right. Take it away, Kenny. Convince us.
All right, thanks, Val. First, I just want to start off by saying that I'm not anti-leave no trace. I think they're good concepts. What I am saying, though, is that they are not laws. Some of these principles are more critical than others, and there are certain situations where you can stray away from them slightly. You don't need to follow ethical concepts to a T. We're just getting so strict on what people propose to be ethical that they make you feel bad for walking on the ground. Maybe there's a pretty plant growing on the trail tread and 9 out of the 10 hikers don't step on it, but the one that does gets scolded. The first one probably should have just picked it anyways, and since it was a slim chance of it surviving there, showed it to the group and got brownie points for putting in the hair of their significant other. I'm going to start off on the rocks though. On a vacation this summer in northern Michigan in a city called Petoskey, we picked up a few Petoskey stones from the beach we stayed at and brought them home. Does that make my family bad people? Should I have left those Petoskey stones there so someone else could pick them up, polish them, shape them, and put them in a necklace or earring and sell them for $100? I never went agate hunting, but that's definitely a thing along the shore of Lake Superior. And if I ever do stumble across one, you bet I'm going to keep it. So why rock collecting is so frowned upon in nature? There are all sorts of websites and information encouraging people to go look for these types of rocks. They're even telling you where to look. If my child thinks a rock looks cool and wants to bring it back home with them, who am I to tell them no? Sorry, buddy. If you don't leave that small, semi-interesting rock right where it lays, the next person that passes by this place is not going to experience the same joy as a 5-year-old when they find a cool looking rock. I mean, honestly, how many adults are still picking up and keeping rocks that they find interesting? Much like Tom, I remember when I found my shoebox in the back of the closet when I was a teenager that was full of bland rocks and wondered, why the heck did I keep all these? Well, because it was fun at the time. It made me explore the outdoors as a kid. And isn't that what we want? To encourage exploration in the outdoors? Let's go back to the flowers. Yes, there is the concept of, what if everyone picked a flower? There would be no more flowers left. Sure, but come on, we're not all doing that. If you're in an LNT hotspot or heavily visited area, then there are going to be rules and barriers as to what you can and cannot do. Picking flowers may be one of them. Staying on the trail is another. Of course, we need to follow these rules or laws. Unfortunately, some people don't. Social trails are created and visitors climb over barriers, and that's sad. Let's face it, there are those people out there. We can try to educate them all we want. They're going to do their own thing. The concept of LNT's leave what you find principle can certainly be applied to those heavily used areas. Where I think the leniency can come in play is those less visited areas, those that take a lot of effort to get to. And we all know that only a certain amount of people are traveling far from a road or easy access point. If I'm doing a backpacking trip with my wife and we come across a bunch of wildflowers, I don't think I'm going to devastate that species by plucking one, putting it in her sweaty hair, and then telling her how the color brings out her beautiful eyes. Taking it back to the kids though, aren't our schools science classes telling kids to go out and collect different species of plants and sometimes even animals like insects? Take them home, press them, and put them in a binder. Depending on how many different species you get depends on how good of a grade you get. There are more kids going through our educational system doing this than there are people out on the trail picking a flower. Seems like that's the crowd we should be talking to, not a bunch of people interested in visiting the outdoors for their own personal enjoyment. LNT isn't talking to the avid outdoor enthusiasts. They already know about this type of stuff, but you don't become an outdoor enthusiast until you experience the outdoors over and over again. Humans are naturally collectors. We started out as gatherers. It's ingrained in our mind. As we grow older and have more experiences, we understand the concept of limitations. That first experience isn't going to be the same as it reoccurs. If a child or even full-grown adult experiences nature for the first time and wants to take something back with them reminiscent on the experience, then I say go for it. The child and adult won't do this every time. Not every person is going to want to do that anyways. But if keeping a flower or rock on your table at home makes you fall in love with outdoors, want to learn more about it, experience again, and then share that love with others, then we need to tone it down with this leave what you find concept. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Kenny, for the kids. Awesome. Well, I see one comment in the chat addressing foraging, which is something we talked a little bit about, in our conversations leading up to this. So I'm wondering, Tom or Kenny or both, if you, you'd like to address, how foraging for, wild edibles or things plays into your perspective.
Kenny, you want to go first?
Sure. I think we are mute at the same time. Well, that kind of goes to my concept of, there's certain situations, there's certain times where you don't need to leave everything in place. Foraging is a great example. I see Dwayne agrees, and, morels, that's okay to go pick those, right? I mean, we can't just leave morels, they're going to go away. Other mushrooms, very popular. So that just goes right up my concept of, there's some leniency in this LNT stuff, especially this particular topic, and it doesn't need to abide by it every single time for every single person.
I have a hard time with this position because I'm actually on Kenny's side here, but I'll take this side. Collecting things from the woods. I mean, you're talking about mushrooms. We can talk about hunting and fishing. How many people do that? How many people have to buy a license? How many people face the restrictions that come with buying a license? Those restrictions are there to protect the environment. Not everyone can go out and shoot a deer. If that happened, we would have no deer left. Not everyone really can go out and pick mushrooms. If all 360 some million of us went out and started picking mushrooms tomorrow, there goes all the mushrooms. So, that's why we have laws around collecting things from the woods, collecting things like animals that we eat and kill, or plants, or so on. Is because of this, if we don't control it, we're going to lose it. Kenny brought up kids. That's like the ultimate and classic example of undermining this, making this a rule and keeping it as a principle, which general I agree with. But, Kenny's family went up to a beach in Michigan and they collected some cool rocks and had a good memory. What if we all went to that beach and did that? Millions and millions of us went to that beach and did that. I mean, it seems unlikely, but over time, even if it's 100,000 people a year who go there and do that, what's it going to look like? And I guess that's just my response there is it's the quantity of people who are going out there nowadays and doing these things, which causes the damage.
Awesome. Thank you both. I do see one other point in the chat from Randall that I would like to kick back to you guys too. Talks about, the fact that, trail building and maintaining in itself leaves a trace. And I'm curious if either of you have anything to say about that. I know it's something we talked about a lot.
I'll go first this time, Kenny. So I've done a lot of stuff with Leave No Trace, actually with the Center for Outdoor Ethics, and met some of their like head educators, so on and so on. And I actually argued with them that they should have Leave No Trace tagged specifically for people who build trails. But I've led a lot of trail crews, and often when you have people who think critically about what you're doing, and when you're certainly cutting a new trail, you are causing devastation in that area for sure, and leaving a humongous trace. The idea here is that, I actually don't call the corridor of the trail a corridor. I call it a zone of sacrifice. Anything in that area is moved out of the way because the point is to make the trail as easy to follow as possible so people don't go off the trail and make all their own other trails. Again, if we have 100,000 people walking down a trail that's built for that numbers, the impact is not going to be that great. If we have 100,000 people just making their way randomly through the woods, the impact on the woods and on our enjoyment of that area is going to be huge. So in that case, we do have to pick an area that makes sense for us to sacrifice really so people can get out there and enjoy the woods without destroying it.
I'm a bad debater because I lose focus. I was reading the chat, so I didn't listen to Val.
Just say I'm right.
Anything about trail building? Do you have any thoughts about trail building as it relates to LNT? Like, aren't we leaving a trace just by building a trail? And is that okay?
I love building trail. It's my job, It's yeah, I mean, it goes against, now I'm winning, I feel like, because there's certain situations where it's okay to, because these are principles, like even Tom mentioned, they're not laws. So there's certain exceptions of when this is okay to do. And, if you build a trail, it does focus on that certain areas and it directs people down that trail to enjoy and to enjoy however they want to enjoy nature on the trail.
Awesome. Well, I think I see a lot of great comments in the chat, and we are going to come back to some of those later. We'll have a little bit of time at the end to talk about other issues. But for now, to kind of wrap up this short debate on the leave no trace, leave what you find principle. Matt, could you put the poll up one more time for folks to see? Again, the question here is, leave no trace principle of leave what you find should be followed by all users without exception. And we're gonna see folks agree or disagree or still maybe not sure. Gonna give it just a minute longer for folks to chime in. All right, let's see. You're able to see, I don't know if you're able to see those results, but it looked like Kenny was wildly successful in persuading people here. We've shifted, now 62% of people disagree with this statement. We have 10% of you who are still maybe not sure. And then just 29% of people agree with this statement. So great results. We were able to change some minds here today.
I owe you a beer, Kenny. You win.
Take it. Take that, LNT.
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, let's do it one more time. Let's talk about geotagging. So, topic of geotagging. Matt, could you put up the poll here for this one? Stephanie is going to argue that the benefits of geotagging outweigh the costs. And Tom is going to argue that that's not the case. And just as a reminder, geotagging is sharing geographical information about, where you are in a public space with the idea that others can kind of see where that location is and perhaps visit it later. All right, I'm gonna flip a coin here. We'll do ladies before gentlemen. So Stephanie, heads or tails?
Heads.
All right, it is heads. So would you like to go first or second?
I'll go second.
Okay. Tom's gonna kick it off again. And before we get started, we'll see the poll here says that 32% of people agree with this statement. 16%, I'm gonna write these down so I remember the change here. 16% of people disagree with this statement. And we've got 53% of people who are not sure. So we've got a lot of easily persuaded, undecided voters out here today, folks. So I will kick it over to Tom to state his case that the benefits of geotagging do not outweigh the costs. Take it away, Tom.
Okay, here we go. All right, thanks, Val, and thanks to my esteemed colleague, Stephanie. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and comrades, brothers and sisters, I'm arguing against the idea that the benefits of geotagging along the North Country Trail outweigh the costs. Let me ask you some rhetorical questions here. Who can tell me exactly and precisely where to find the oldest tree on Earth? A bristlecone pine tree estimated at over 5,000 years old. Who can tell me exactly and precisely where to find the tallest tree on Earth? Who can tell me exactly and precisely where to find the ancient Native American hunting blinds on the Tioga Pass in Yosemite National Park? My guess is that none of you can say where these things are, and not because the land agencies and scientists don't know. It's because that information is kept secret to protect those trees and that history. This has nothing to do with keeping new hikers out of our favorite areas, and everything to do with protecting those resources. These, of course, are extreme examples of where we don't want a huge amount of people to go. From the slides that Val showed earlier, we know that, again, hundreds of millions of people are heading outside. This amount of people has the potential to cause great damage, not because people are bad, but because the impact of so many people could kill or destroy those treasures. To be clear, I agree that there are real benefits to geotagging, and in general, I'm not against the practice. However, as it stands today, with seemingly no regulation or structure to help people determine when geotagging is and is not appropriate, I'll argue the costs are just too high. And what are the costs? Well, the very destruction of those areas that our trail exists to protect. In a phrase, our outdoor areas are being loved to death, and geotagging aids in that destruction. The idea of an area being loved to death is not new. For example, in 1953, the historian and journalist Bernard DeVoto wrote an article in Harper's Magazine entitled, "Let's Close Our National Parks Because of This Overlove." DeVoto pointed out two issues that were severely impacting our parks: severely limited budgets and societal change thanks to technology. In the case back then, we had better roads and better cars and a lot more people, mostly caused by the economic boom after World War II. Shoestring budgets and societal change, well, that sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Today, the budgets for our parks and forests are continually slashed. But let's focus on the second part. Societal change today is also due to technology, smartphones and social media, for example. It feels like these things have been around for a long time, but really they have not. We're still in the beginning phases of this smartphone social media age, and society is still figuring out the best ways to use these tools and perhaps what we should avoid. Examples of environmental destruction due to geotagging are numerous. I bet some of you have seen the real effects of it on your own sections of trail. Trampled plants, exposed tree roots, increased erosion, trail tread degradation. Many sections of the North Country Trail were built years ago, improperly designed, and not built for the number of users we see today. These issues, coupled with limited resources, can lead to whole sections of trail falling into complete disrepair. Falling into complete disrepair and causing users to avoid that trail and to make their own. So what should we do? Should we ban geotagging and ignore its benefits? No, I don't think so. I think there are some solutions though. Leave No Trace has created some guidelines to help users determine when to use geotagging and when to consider not using it. Geotagging can be made a little less precise, for example. Geotaggers can be encouraged to tag lesser used but just as beautiful sections of our trail. Social media is used to promote work days to perform maintenance on those impacted sections of trail, and it can be used to pressure our elected leaders to increase budgets and overall support for the trail. Education through social media is very powerful. Social media can be and is used by the NPS, NCTA, and our chapters and affiliates and others to educate users about the negative effects of overuse, especially in sensitive areas or where the trail's condition may not allow for massive use. And we can also suggest ways that people can limit their impact while still enjoying the area. In conclusion, geotagging has the potential to be an important tool in helping all users enjoy the North Country Trail responsibly. However, until some standards for responsible geotagging are established and adopted, the potential costs of our great trail being loved to death are just too great. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for participating in both of the discussions today. We are down a regional trail coordinator, so Tom got to play double duty. So thanks for that. And I am going to just kick it right over to Stephanie.
Yeah, thanks, Val. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I will just start by saying thank you, Tom, for that great layout of all of the positive benefits of geotagging, of which there are many. So I am arguing that the benefits of geotagging outweigh the costs. So to begin with, geotagging is a tool that can be used to increase access and inclusivity on public lands. There are a lot of different, more diverse types of people using social media and geotagging by putting your location, not necessarily very specific, because in saying geotagging, we're not saying specifically you're putting like a very, within like, a couple feet of an area, but oftentimes geotagging is a general area. So being able to geotag and let people know where something is through an avenue like social media that a lot of diverse people have access to. And here we are talking specifically often about Black and Brown people, people who have lived often in urban areas who may not have generational access to the outdoors. And so to those folks, oftentimes the anti-geotagging movement can feel like a form of gatekeeping or elitism. So those who have had access, who were growing up going outside, their dad took them to their favorite fishing hole. Well, those, other people never had that opportunity. So should they not be able to have to know some of the good fishing spots so they can have a positive experience just because of structural racism, which would include like the practice of redlining by putting people who are minorities, people of color in parts of cities where there aren't as much access to natural spaces, or have working class experiences where they don't have the ability to take time off to go out and experience some of these places. And also it feels elitist because who gets to decide who is the gatekeeper, who, you get to have access and know where this beautiful place is, but somebody else doesn't. What gives folks the authority? Because we're talking about geotagging on public land. This is not private land. This is land that's open to the public that, is there for the enjoyment of all people. So this allows a more diverse, inclusive part of our society to know where some of those places are, to say, oh, I might want to go to that place. Because otherwise they might not even know anywhere where they want to start. If you have no experience in these places, you have no idea, what's a cool place to go? I don't know, but you're following your friend who has, on Instagram or on Facebook who, shows cool pictures, and you say, yeah, I want to go there. And I know I'm going to have a good time. And I would also say, like, if you're worried about a specific location and you don't want too many people to know about it, why even post it on social media at all? If you really want it to be a secret, then just don't tell people about it, because inevitably somebody, if it's really cool, someone's going to want to ask. You know, people want to be involved and want to see cool things. And I would say there's also no scientific data to prove there are negative impacts from geotagging. You can say, yes, there are negative impacts from overcrowding, but you can't say that that is actually connected to the practice of geotagging specifically. There's no qualitative or quantitative data on that. And so my second point would be that geotagging on social media is also a tool to empower the next generation of outdoor advocates. It allows people to just have an experience outdoors, and to let other people know, and to grow a community of people who may have not generally had access to those places historically. So it increases accessibility for those who've been systematically denied an outdoor recreation experience. And it inspires people to get outside and experience the benefits of outdoor recreation. And those people who know and have positive experiences, you know, I'm sure a lot of the folks here, the volunteers, like, you want to give back and be a part of, you know, a conservation community because you had those positive experiences growing up, because you went and saw those beautiful places. So how can somebody who doesn't have those experiences, you know, want to be part of the conservation movement and to give back and to steward folks, or to those lands? And then there are also like better ways to reduce the negative impacts on public lands than just to say, like, well, we won't geotag. You know, just saying, I mean, how much better is the situation of overuse just by not geotagging? Like, if everyone stopped geotagging, would that really solve the overuse problem? I mean, probably not. There's just, you know, there's a lot of people who want to be outside, and there just aren't enough public lands as people realize the benefits of going outside, and those places are being loved to death. So the more effective ways that you can reduce negative impacts are, you know, as we talked about, educating and informing people about stewardship and leave no trace principles. You can lobby legislators to properly fund public lands, increase appropriations for natural resource management. You can promote less crowded locations, and you can support development of a permit system if something like that needs to happen. So again, I think the benefits of geotagging outweigh the costs, because geotagging is a tool to increase access and inclusivity on public lands. It empowers the next generation of outdoor advocates, and there are better ways to reduce negative impacts to public lands than to ban geotagging. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I don't see any questions in the chat specific to this, so I think we can go ahead and put up the poll right now and see how folks are feeling about the issue of geotagging. So again, the poll is: the benefits of geotagging outweigh the costs. All right, I'm going to share the results here. It looks like 53% of people agree with this statement. 26% of people disagree, and 21% of you are still not sure. So we have swayed some people to agree with this. So congratulations, Tom, successful on this one. But I think that congratulations, Stephanie, my bad. I'm
0-2, Val. I'm 0-2.
0-2, Tom.
Stephanie, I also owe you a beer now.
Not a good start to the season. Hopefully the Steelers start out better than that. All right. Well, congratulations, Stephanie. My apologies. And glad we were able to sway a few of you out of that not sure category and have a good discussion about it. So I'm just going to wrap kind of a little bow on this and then open it up. So I guess what I'd like you to walk away thinking about is, is Kenny wrong? Is Tom wrong? Is Stephanie a bad person for thinking the way she does? Maybe no, no. That's not the point, that we're trying to make here. And we purposely, chose a couple issues that weren't as clear cut as should people litter? I'm sure everyone on this call today would raise their hand and say, no, people should not litter. But some of these issues are a lot more nuanced than that and fall, we all probably fall somewhere along the spectrum, and being absolutist is not the goal here. The idea is to keep these discussions going and have a framework for making these decisions. So I found a good quote from the Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics when I was getting prepared for this, and I'm going to read it to you guys because I thought that really drove the point home for me. It says, "Leave no trace is a spectrum. There are no rights and wrongs. It's a framework for making good decisions about enjoying the outdoors responsibly, regardless of how one chooses to do so. If outdoor enthusiasts stop and think about the potential impacts and associated consequences of a particular action, it can go a long way towards ensuring protection of our shared outdoor spaces." So I thought that really drove the point here, point home there, that when we are, when you're working or recreating outdoors, before making a decision, stop and ask yourself what the impact might be if everyone made that same decision. And if you take away one thing, yeah, I hope that that's it. I'd like to give, at least circle back to one actionable item. I would encourage everyone to spend a little bit of time on Leave No Trace's website and take a class if you have the opportunity to. We had originally hoped that this session, when we were thinking about celebration in person, we had hoped that this session would be a Leave No Trace training. So maybe next year's celebration, we can consider that again. Although this debate style is really pretty fun. So maybe we'll find something else to debate next year in person. So we do have about, 5 minutes left if we cut it off right at 2 p.m. here, but we might be able to go over a few extra minutes. I'd like to open it up kind of to the group and let the regional trail coordinators or today's presenters, address, are there any other issues, of trail ethics that you are facing, as trail maintainers or as people recreating on the North Country Trail that you would like to mention? And I'll look through the chat a little bit here as we're talking to and see if there's anything there.
We sometimes find that people put their camp right on top of the trail. They'll even build a little fire pit right on top of the trail.
Yeah. Val, my my thing I've been on lately that 90% of the users are using 10% of the trail, and applying the ethics that were in that quote that you just shared, and using geotagging and other tools to get folks out onto the other 90% of the trail, I think is a great idea.
Yeah, I think Connie, I think you made that point about people camping right on the trail. I think a theme we see on both of these topics was education. And somebody had put it in the chat about feeling shame. If I ran up to that person and was like, "What's wrong with you? Why are you camping on the trail? Are you dumb or something?" Like, that person's going to feel shamed and not feel very welcome here. But instead, if I approach them and say, "Hey, how's it going? I see you set up your camp here. You've been on this trail before, et cetera," and then just kind of slowly walk through like, "Hey, actually, when we set up camp, it's better to do it off the trail, maybe about 200 feet away or so from the trail. That helps protect the trail and other users and you, et cetera." So I think that education goes a long way to dealing with a lot of these problems that we see. Val, there's a good one on here about hiking the PCT during the pandemic, and how the PCTA tried to, shut down the trail for this season. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I did. Do you have any thoughts on that one, Tom?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding? I think the question was, is it ethical to ignore those rules and get on the trails? I think that, the reason why, to me, as I understand it, there's two reasons why the PCTA decided to discourage through hikers, especially. One is because at the time we didn't understand enough about the virus itself and how it spread. So they were trying to shut down people going along the trail to help slow down the spread of the virus. So I would say in that case, if you're going to ignore those rules, in my opinion, it's unethical, because you could be putting other people at risk. If you are a person carrying the virus and not showing any kind of signs of it, you could be making other people sick and causing harm to others. They were also closing the trail as well for maintenance issues. They were concerned they weren't going to be able to get a lot of their crews out there to perform regular maintenance on the trail. And with people out there using the trail, it would put them a year behind on maintenance. And so they were trying to forestall the degradation of the trail by discouraging use of the trail. I think your point that you made is a good one about hikers wanting to get out and hike on trails for health, physical and mental health. So perhaps instead of hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail, which tends to be a little more remote, to have a dirt path, maybe find those trails that have, compacted gravel or even a paved path. It's not as fun or exciting, but that way you might be able to do both. Protect the trail that's not armored, and also get outside and get some, increase your physical and mental health. That's what I'd say about that.
I did see one other comment in the chat about rock cairns. Curious, I know that's one that I've heard from a couple folks. I'm curious, Kenny or Stephanie, I'll put one of you on the spot, or both of you simultaneously on the spot. Any thoughts about rock cairns and how that fits into, I guess maybe Kenny, it goes back to that leave no trace principle of, leave what you find there.
Yeah, not a hot topic, but kind of, we've discussed it too internally. I mean, that could have been a topic for this call, but I don't want to go back to the kids thing, but I'm gonna. If you have your kids, I think that's okay. That would be the exception, and even as parents, then, or whoever it is, if they walk down the trail, you can kick the rock cairn off to the side, and it starts fresh again. I guess that's what goes in my mind. But I don't want to discourage youth or anybody who's new to the trail or to the outdoors in general. Of don't touch that rock. Don't make art, natural art. But I definitely understand and agree that there's too many cairns out there for no reason, and if they're in the wilderness, then there is definitely a reason for them. But if you're on a well-marked, blazed, established trail, I kick them.
I'd also say it could be really dangerous, because there are sometimes, the cairns are used as official guiding markers. And so if folks are building non-official cairns, they can lead people off trail who can get lost. So it can be really dangerous. Also, depending on where you get your rocks, which rocks you are stacking, particularly rocks that are in like a river and a water body, there are creatures that append to the rocks, and it can be a really important habitat for them, or like fish eggs. So, if you're disturbing those areas, it can actually have, depending on what type of species it is, it can have an effect on the population in that area, or like, how many people are disrupting those rocks. So there are like ecological, reasons not to build cairns as well.
Awesome. Well, I think we are right at our time here. So I think these are interesting discussions. You know, let's keep them going. I would definitely encourage you all to like dive a little deeper on recreate responsibly and leave no trace. And hopefully we can do this again next year. Abby, I don't know if you have any wrap up for this session.
I just want to say thank you all. This is very enjoyable. I could see a debate being a future, you know, a yearly thing. We can change up the topics. But again, thank you all for joining us. Just a friendly reminder, we still have an event tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. It's 94 nights on the Superior Hiking Trail. It's going to be led by Joe Swanson, talking over the course of 14 years, how she has stayed at all 94 backcountry campsites for the hikers along the Superior Hiking Trail. So come and join that experience with us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. And again, if you can't make it, it will be recorded. And we do have some of our past videos that have been recorded or up on our website already too. So if you've missed some of our previous ones, please feel free to check that out. But with that, I'll let you all go and enjoy your afternoon.